Hello everyone, Time to Grind here, and today I wanted to talk about Slasher's Keep. And Slasher's Keep is an FPS dungeon crawling roguelite that plays unlike any other roguelite I have ever played, and it has an extremely unique art style and just overall feel. And it kind of flew under my radar. You know, apparently it's been out in early access for a while, but it just fully launched, and so I wanted to try it out and let you guys know my thoughts on it. Also, after this video, if you want to see more gameplay of Slasher's Keep, I made a long Let's Play that I'll link to in the comments down below and the description and end of the video. But let's just jump into the review. And the first thing I want to mention is something that is pretty obvious at first. The game takes place in a 3D world, but like all of the enemies and the loot you find in the game are almost 2D. So they do that thing that you may have seen other games do where the 2D sprites like rotate to always match your perspective. And it kind of gives me this kind of like unsettling feeling, at least to me, because it makes it seem like every single enemy in the game is always watching you, even if they're dead and their corpse is just, they're still rotating to match your perspective. And so this was the first thing that obviously stuck out to me, as I haven't played a game like this in longer than I can remember. And so beyond the presentation of the game, it plays like some other FPS roguelites. You start in a dungeon and you open up a chest at the beginning of every run that will give you 2 to 3 random items. Normally it'll be things like armor or accessories, and there'll always be a weapon. And so you'll be finding a lot of different loot, so there's a lot of attention to the inventory system. You have a bag that can hold a certain amount of items by size, and every item you find takes up a different amount of space, and you can equip any items you have on your character, and it kind of shows you, your character and all the little slots that you can fill, like your helmet or your boots or gloves or weapons and stuff like that. And the one thing I like about this system is, beyond it just being very streamlined and easy to understand, is if you mouse over an item, say like a helmet, and you already have a helmet, it'll show you very easily if it's better or worse in the various stats it has, so you don't have to like get a calculator or a spreadsheet or something to figure those things out. And so from there, you go from room to room killing enemies, finding new loot, finding secrets, leveling up, and just overall trying to find the exit point to climb one stage higher in the dungeon to try escaping. And the combat in this game is a little bit more rigid than you might encounter in other FPS roguelites, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing, and I'll explain why. So for every weapon, you can swing it normally, you can charge attack in 3 different ways by holding different directions, and you can parry enemy attacks. So as enemies see you, they'll start coming to you to fight you, and because the models are kind of these 2D sprites, a lot of the times they have to get really close up to you to fight you. So a lot of the times you start getting overwhelmed by several enemies just getting right up in your face, and a lot of the enemies take a lot of hits in order to die. So in order to not get completely overwhelmed, you can actually hit enemies with your inventory sack, knocking them back a little bit, and I absolutely love the kind of like flavor behind this. Like, you have this whole bag of items that you're obviously supposedly carrying, so you might as well hit the enemies, that you're trying to fight with it. And so the combat is a little bit more about timing your attacks and blocking the enemies, and overall it's very spacing focused. You can't let the enemies start overwhelming you right up in your face, because otherwise it gets very hard to, hurt them without taking damage, because they're going to be attacking at different times, and you just don't have enough time to hit them while also blocking and everything like that. Also, the game knows it's not this crazy action-packed game, and so the rooms you fight in sometimes contain traps like spikes that you can hit enemies into, instantly killing them, or like pits that you can knock them into that will just obviously kill them because they fell into a pit. And it's really satisfying to get these insta-kills, and it's definitely, kind of encouraged, because sometimes it'll throw a lot of enemies at you, but it will then also, have these traps all over the place to kind of encourage you to do that. So a lot of the times I would have like a heavy attack charged as I went into a room, so I could get just at least one quick good hit off, and then I would try to space enemies and fight them, as they were coming to me, and see if, there were any traps or anything that I could hit them into. You also have wands, which are the other major way you can deal damage, and there are special ones, but the ones you'll see the most, at least at the beginning, just shoot these slow projectiles at enemies, and they all have limited ammo, and they will break when they run out, and so you can find more ammo for them, occasionally as an item that'll recharge whatever wand you have, but you overall just can't use your wands too much, and so that's kind of one of my minor complaints with the game from what I've played so far. Because the ammo is so limited, it makes me just never really want to use them because I always feel like I'm wasting it or I should be saving it for some better time. Plus, the projectile speed, at least on the default weapons, kind of, at the beginning of the game, just are so slow, so I could barely hit anything. The other huge part about this game is it has a whole leveling system, very similar to an RPG. So when you get enough experience to level up, you instantly get all of your health back, you get a couple of skill points, and sometimes new abilities. So with the skill points, you can put them in strength, dexterity, and intelligence, all which have different aspects of the game that they kind of influence. So strength might impact how much health you have, while dexterity might improve, how much your armor helps you, and they all kind of affect several different things in the game. Also, some weapons and items will have minimum skill requirements, so a certain weapon might require you to, say, have 5 strength in order to even be able to use it. There is also a book that shows you all of the abilities you have, and you can get more by leveling up, and they can do things like giving you lifesteal a little bit on your weapons, to having more knockback with specific types of weapons and more. And I'm not 100% how this works, but if you level them up more than once, you can actually permanently unlock them in future runs. So now would be a good time to explain how the roguelite elements of the game work. So when you die, you restart on the first floor of the dungeon. You lose around 25% of the skill points you had in strength, dexterity, and intelligence, you lose a lot of your gold, and you lose all of your weapons you had in any abilities that were not permanent. So the longer you play and the better you do, you can start getting more of the permanent abilities that will stay on you, and you'll get, stronger from the start, and you'll have higher stats and hopefully more gold normally. And there's also special places in the world that you can deposit weapons and items in that you don't want, and then they'll show up in that starting chest for your next run. And I think this is a really cool feature because say you have a really good weapon, but you already have a really good weapon that you're enjoying, you can put one of them in the chest. That way in your future run, you get a good weapon right off the start, and it's really, really satisfying. And overall, the game is definitely on the challenging side. I've played for a couple of hours in order to get a general feel of the game in order to make a review for you all, but I know for a fact that there's so much in this game that I haven't even scratched the surface of. So it's definitely the type of game that you could play for countless hours to master and discover everything it has to offer. And one thing I do want to touch on is the game is slightly rough around the edges, but it's not even necessarily in a bad way. Sometimes some of the, enemies, they'll get caught on like a corner of something, or, 2 sprites will be walking on top of each other just because of, the pathing of the, enemies and stuff like that. And overall, I can't believe I'm saying this, but they honestly add to the just atmosphere of the game because you have, a 3D world, but all of these 2D sprites that are constantly just flipping what their animations are to try to follow your perspective. Some of these bugs, I wouldn't even call them bugs. It's not like, I had crashes or anything like that. Just some of these kind of quirky things the game has kind of just adds to the feel and the experience of the game, in my personal opinion. I do think there could be some quality of life changes, like maybe a better save system, maybe a better kind of like mini-map. The mini-map was a little bit confusing to look at least for me. But overall, I think a lot of it adds to the, kind of art style and theme of the game to kind of make it look like it's this older game than it really is in a way. And everyone might not agree with me, but I personally just thought it added to the charm of the game. So overall, I would definitely recommend Slasher's Keep to fans of FPS roguelites, as long as you know it's a little less action-packed in terms of like high-octane combat, and more of like a fleshed-out RPG, element systems with like the inventory and character development side of things. Also, if anything, you should definitely get the game just to experience the really interesting style of the like 2D-ish sprites in the 3D world, because it's so interesting. And I didn't touch on it too much in this review, but the soundtrack is also amazing in this game. And if you guys have played Slasher's Keep, I would love to know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Also, if you want to see more gameplay of Slasher's Keep, definitely check out the Let's Play I made for the game that I released before this video. And if you still can't get enough of me, you should definitely check out my podcast, Neon Apes, where we talk about a bunch of hilarious and random nerdy stuff. And if you enjoyed this video, then consider leaving a like down below and subscribing to see more content. I make 3 to 6 video reviews and Let's Plays a week on a wide variety of games, but especially roguelites and, FPS games. And I'm actually starting to live stream once a week on Saturdays, so if you're watching this the day it comes out, stay tuned for that, and subscribe and ring that bell like all the big boy YouTubers say to see the future videos and live streams I'm doing. But if you're going to be grinding out some games of Slasher's Keep, I wish you guys luck, and see you all next time.